Picture this. It's 1790. New York City is the capital of the United States. George Washington himself is hosting a state dinner, and the guest of honor isn't a king, not even... he's just an amalgamation of a bunch of different things. He's a mutt. He's a guy who grew up half Scottish, half Creek, spoke French at the dinner table, owned some slaves, ran a trading empire, and was at that exact moment drawing a secret paycheck from the Spanish government, all while he negotiated with the Americans. Washington needed this man's signature so bad he rolled out the red carpet in the actual capital of the country. History skipped him. We're not gonna. God, that hurt. Hi, this is Jeremy. Welcome to Not in the Book. Alexander McGillivray shows up around 1750 near what is now Montgomery, Alabama. His daddy Lachlan is a Scottish trader who came over broke. Story of America, poor as dirt, built himself into one of the richest men in the Southeast off of some deerskins. Deerskins, yes, deerskins. All because Europeans are too lazy to skin their own deer, hence he made a lot of money. His mother is Sahoy Marchand, part French, part Creek. Creek society runs matrilineal, so you are who your mother is. So even though your daddy's a Scottish tycoon, young Alexander is basically Creek royalty through his mama's Wind clan, one of the most powerful bloodlines in the entire Confederacy. So the kid is born already holding 2 winning lottery tickets. He's got a rich Scottish dad, a Royal Creek mom, and most kids get one good hand dealt to them if they're lucky. This dude got a whole deck stacked in his favor before he can even walk. Rich parents do what rich parents do and ship him off to Charleston and Savannah for a proper education. English literature, business. The kid comes out reading Cicero and doing bookkeeping, which honestly sounds like the most boring ass superhero origin story ever written. But like America proved, turns out the deadliest weapon in 18th century America wasn't a musket. It was a guy who understood paperwork. Then the revolution hits, and Lachlan McGillivray does something real stupid. You know, for a guy who built an empire literally out of nothing, he sees everything happening and decides, you know what? I think I'm just going to stay with the British crown. That was a really bad move, because Georgia decided it was going to confiscate everything he owned. Every acre, every dollar, every warehouse. The state of Georgia looked at his entire fortune and basically said, "That's a nice life work you've built up there. Sure would be a shame if somebody declared it public property." And packs up and goes back to Scotland with his tail between his legs, essentially disappearing from his son's life for good. Deuces. Alexander is left standing in the wreckage in his 20s, watching everything his dad built get seized by the same country that is about to become the most powerful force on this continent. You'd think that would make a man bitter. Simple. Pick the Creek side, hate America forever, cut and dry. Alexander looked at what happened to his father and the actual lesson of it all. You never trust anybody with your whole hand. You diversify your loyalties like they're a stock portfolio. Done. By his late 20s, Alexander McGillivray is not just a Creek man with a fancy education. He actually becomes the closest thing that the Creek Confederacy ever had to a single head of state. The Creek towns were independent. There's no king, there's no president, no single chief running the whole show. It was more like, I don't know, it's like 80 different mayors occasionally agreeing to show up to a barbecue. McGillivray built himself into the guy who could actually get all 80 mayors into one room and talk them into agreeing on some shit. And that is a genuinely absurd political skill. All of these Creek towns, getting them to agree on anything is like trying to French kiss a hippo. Google it. I'm sure it's out there. He does it through his kinship ties, through his mother's clan status, and frankly through being smarter and better educated than almost everybody else in the room. White or Creek. Contemporary Americans straight up called him the Emperor of the Creek Nation, which was never an actual title. It was just a bunch of white guys trying to put a European label on shit. You know, while he's doing all of this, he's also running his own personal trading operation and plantation, complete with enslaved labor, just like his father did. This man wasn't out here some romantic freedom fighter living off the land. He was the businessman in war paint. And believe me, business was good. So this guy goes full chess grandmaster while everyone else is playing checkers. Spain controls Florida. The brand new United States controls everything pushing west and south into the Creek territory. The United States controls everything pushing west and south into Creek territory. Britain's still lurking out and about trying to stay relevant. And McGillivray looks at this situation and decides, why pick one? I can get paid by all three. 1784, he signs the Treaty of Pensacola with Spain. Spain gives him a literal colonel's commission in their army and agrees to arm and trade with the Creek Nation, which is pretty impressive considering his combat experience mostly involved surviving meetings. McGillivray, a man who never fought in a single Spanish battle, is now Colonel McGillivray, and he's on the Spanish payroll. Then, in 1790, he does the unthinkable. He travels to New York City, the capital of the United States, and negotiates face-to-face with Mr. George Washington and Secretary of War Henry Knox. Old George rolled out the red carpet for him. Half of the politicians in early America would have killed for an invitation to Washington's dinner party. I mean, we're talking power trip. That's strapping a rocket to your ass. McGillivray walked in like he had a reservation. They signed the Treaty of New York, and on paper it looks like the Creek Nation just agreed to shrink their territory and accept U.S. authority. McGillivray got the United States to formally recognize massive chunks of Creek land as sovereign Creek territory. And he got made a brigadier general in the United States Army, because why the hell not? That was a clause that they kept quiet for years. So he's getting a personal pension of around $1,200 a year from the American government. Spain's paying him. The United States is paying him. Everybody thinks they're buying influence, and everybody convinced that they're the smartest guy in the room. Yeah, governments really haven't changed a whole lot. So let's tally the scoreboard up for this fella. Spanish Colonel's Commission. Check. United States Brigadier General Commission. Check. Secret pension from the American Treasury. Check. Continue weapon and trade deals with Spain. Check. Because he never actually stopped doing that after signing with Washington. This dude was running the single greatest side hustle in early American history, and he did it with a straight face at formal state dinners wearing his best coat. Now, I could wrap this up as some slick underdog story, the little guy who outsmarted empires, and leave it there, but that isn't the whole truth. And Not in the Book doesn't do half-assed stories. Like I said earlier, Alexander McGillivray was also a slaveholder who had his own plantation using enslaved labor, same as his father did. Same as plenty of powerful men on every side of these deals did. That is no shit. When Britain lost the 13 colonies, they were somewhat worried about it. They were way more worried about losing the Caribbean colonies, because that's where all the rum, the sugar, the slave labor was. That's where their money was. It was almost double what they were making off of the Caribbean colonies as opposed to the 13, the United States, if you will. Everybody who had money had slaves. It's stupid and it's horrible and immoral, and I could go on and on and on for days about it, but it did happen, so we can't fucking get rid of it. It is a blight on us. To the guys who did the selling too. Shame on you motherfuckers as well. And so I didn't want that to be a footnote. That's actually part of who the man was. And to be honest with you, he wasn't universally beloved among his own people. Plenty of the Creek leaders resented how much personal wealth and power he accumulated, all the while claiming to represent the whole Confederacy. Some accused him, not without reason, of enriching himself and his own trading partners more than the Creek Nation as a collective. He's not a noble resistance leader in a Hollywood montage. He's not a simple villain either. And history books love two kinds of people. You got fucking saints or you have cartoon villains. And MacGillivray had the audacity to be complicated. And that's harder to fit into a chapter heading. You gotta give the man props though. He was a brilliant and ruthlessly self-interested operator who used every advantage, his blood, his education, and the confidence that his nerves gave him in a world that was actively trying to erase people like him. He didn't rise above the game that everybody else was playing. He just fucking played it better than everybody else in the room. And he made sure he got paid from every direction possible. That's a harder story to tell than hero or villain. It's also a truer one. MacGillivray dies 1793 in Pensacola, likely from illness somewhere around the age of 43. Still, at the time of his death, formally holding titles and payments from Spain and the United States simultaneously. He spent his entire career convincing rival governments that they could trust him, and somehow they all kept coming back to the negotiating table. Within a generation of his death, the careful balance he had built up between the Creek sovereignty and the outside powers started collapsing. The land deals that he negotiated, the alliances that he juggled, none of it held. None of it held once he wasn't there to keep juggling it. By 1814, the Creek Nation was fighting the Creek War against Andrew Jackson, proving that if Andrew Jackson shows up in your chapter, statistically speaking, somebody's gonna have a bad day. 1830, the Indian Removal Act was forcing Creek people west entirely. MacGillivray built a system that only worked because one uniquely talented, uniquely connected man was standing in the middle of it all. And systems like that tend to die with the man. He's buried in an unmarked grave in Pensacola. What the shit? Seriously? Unmarked? He's buried in an unmarked grave in Pensacola. The man who got George Washington to host him at a stately dinner drew paychecks from rival governments who he held together one of America's most powerful native confederacies through sheer political fucking insight. This is Jeremy. It's not in the book. Damn phone's getting ready to die. I'm out.